The grinding sound filled the quiet suburban night, loud enough to make the distant crickets stop their chirping. It was a noise that scraped against the soul, a terrible, tearing metal shriek, followed by the heavy, sickening thud of something big collapsing in on itself. Alex Miller watched, hidden in the deep shadows of the garage, as the giant metal jaws of the excavator chomped down again. Each bite tore into the shiny, expensive SUV, twisting its sleek lines into jagged, useless pieces. The once bright paint now peeled and cracked, revealing the dull, bent metal beneath. Headlights, still stubbornly attached, blinked once, then shattered into a million tiny diamonds as the machine's powerful arm swung through the front of the car. Alex felt a strange mix of fear and a cold, hard sense of victory. This was Brenda Sterling's car, the very car that had, for months, been her weapon against Alex's peace. And now, it was becoming nothing more than a giant metal cube, ready for the junk heap. A sudden bark from a neighbor's dog, sharp and close, made Alex jump, heart pounding like a drum. Had someone seen? Was it over before it even began? Alex had only moved into the quiet Oakwood Hills neighborhood 6 months ago, seeking a little piece of calm after years of city bustle. The small house, with its friendly front porch and a patch of green lawn, felt like a dream come true. The best part? The little patch of bare earth along the property line, perfect for planting a small hedge. Alex loved the idea of growing something beautiful and green, a living fence that would bring a touch of nature and a bit of privacy to the yard. It wasn't just about blocking out the world, it was about nurturing life, watching something grow, and making the house truly feel like a home. Alex spent weeks researching the best type of hedge, picking out healthy young bushes from the local nursery, and carefully planting each one. Watering them daily, talking to them as if they were old friends, Alex watched them slowly sprout new leaves, feeling a warm sense of pride. The hedge was more than just plants, it was a promise, a symbol of new beginnings and a peaceful life. For the first few months, life in Oakwood Hills was just as wonderful as Alex had hoped. Neighbors waved from their porches, kids rode bikes down the tree-lined streets, and the air smelled fresh and clean. The hedge grew steadily, a vibrant green line that added a cheerful touch to the front of the house. Then came the first letter. It wasn't a friendly note, or a casual chat. It was a stiff, formal letter from the Homeowners Association, or HOA, signed by the president, Brenda Sterling. The letter said Alex's recycling bin was put out too early on Tuesday. Alex, a little surprised, quickly fixed it, figuring it was just a small mix-up. No problem, Alex thought, just following the rules. A few weeks later, another letter arrived, this time about the color of the mailbox. Alex had picked a lovely deep blue, thinking it looked nice. The letter said it had to be a specific shade of beige. It felt a little silly, but Alex, wanting to be a good neighbor, painted the mailbox the right color. It was a little dull, but fine. Alex believed in trying to get along with everyone, in finding common ground and understanding. It was always better to be kind, to try and see things from another person's side, even if their rules seemed a bit odd. But then, Brenda Sterling started focusing on the hedge. First, it was a friendly-looking suggestion that the hedge might be growing a tiny bit too tall. Alex, always eager to please, immediately got out the shears and trimmed it down, even though it was barely 2 feet high. A week later, another letter arrived. This one said the hedge was exceeding the permitted width by half an inch. Half an inch. Alex measured it with a tape measure, puzzled. It was exactly as wide as the rule allowed. Alex even took a picture and sent it back to the HOA office, along with a polite note explaining the measurement. The response was a cold email from Brenda herself, saying that the issue persisted and a small fine was attached. Alex sighed. It felt like Brenda was looking for problems where there weren't any, especially with the hedge. Alex tried to be super extra nice to Brenda. One sunny afternoon, seeing Brenda struggling with some heavy bags from her car, Alex hurried over to help. Here, let me get that for you, Brenda. Alex offered with a friendly smile. Brenda barely looked up, gave a curt nod, and pulled the bags away, saying, I'm perfectly capable, thank you, Alex. It was a little hurtful, but Alex brushed it off. Another time, Alex baked a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies, Brenda's favorite kind, according to a mutual neighbor, Sarah. Alex walked them over, hoping to smooth things over. Brenda opened the door, looked at the plate of warm cookies with a flat expression, and said, Is this about the hedge? Because the rules are quite clear, Alex. We have standards here. She took the cookies, but didn't invite Alex in, or even offer a simple, thank you. It was clear her focus was still the hedge. Other neighbors, like David from 2 houses down, would sometimes share knowing glances with Alex. Brenda and her rules, huh? David would whisper, shaking his head. She's got an eye on everyone. My gnome collection almost got me evicted last year. It seemed everyone had their own Brenda story, but no one dared to openly challenge her. Alex felt a little less alone, but also more frustrated. What could you do when the person making the rules was also the one breaking your spirit? Alex kept trimming the hedge, kept checking the rules, doing everything by the book, but the fines kept coming, usually for something impossibly small. Then, the accidents began. At first, Alex thought it was just bad driving. Brenda, in her huge, shiny SUV, would sometimes turn a little too wide when leaving her driveway, which was directly across from Alex's. Her tires would brush the edge of Alex's lawn, leaving faint tracks. Alex didn't think much of it, just a careless driver. But then, it started happening more often. And closer. One morning, Alex stepped outside and noticed a small section of the hedge looked flattened. A few branches were snapped clean off, and there were unmistakable tire marks deeply pressed into the soil right next to where the hedge grew. It looked like someone had driven right over the very edge of the hedge. Alex looked at Brenda's SUV, parked neatly in her driveway, and felt a cold prickle of suspicion. It couldn't be, could it? Alex tried to tell themselves it was probably a delivery truck, or some clumsy teenager. Alex carefully nursed the damaged hedge, trying to make the broken branches stand up again, feeling a pang of sadness. The hedge, once so perfect, now had a noticeable dent. The damage got worse. A week later, a larger chunk of the hedge was visibly smashed. This time, there were clear tire marks running right over the top of the young, tender bushes. It wasn't just a brush, it was a deliberate crush. Alex's heart sank. This wasn't an accident anymore. This was Brenda. Alex tried to talk to her, walking across the street, a knot of worry in their stomach. Brenda, Alex began, trying to keep their voice calm, I think someone might be driving over my hedge. There are tire marks, and it's getting really damaged. Brenda looked at Alex with an icy stare. Perhaps your hedge is simply too close to the street, Alex, she said, her voice like chipped ice. Or perhaps it's simply not robust enough for a well-maintained neighborhood. Some plants just aren't suited. She turned and walked back into her house, leaving Alex standing there, stunned. It was clear she wasn't going to help. She was the one doing it. One evening, as dusk was settling and the streetlights flickered on, Alex was putting away gardening tools when Brenda's SUV slowly pulled out of her driveway. Alex watched, a strange feeling in their gut. Instead of turning smoothly, Brenda deliberately aimed her massive vehicle. The tires mounted the curb with a slight bump, then drove right over the corner of Alex's hedge, crushing a whole section of the young, vibrant green bushes. It wasn't a quick swipe, she held it there for a moment, the vehicle rolling slowly, deliberately, over the plants, before smoothly pulling away and driving down the street. Alex stood frozen, the gardening shears falling from their numb fingers and clattering on the driveway. The sound was deafening in the sudden silence. The hedge, which Alex had carefully nurtured, was now a mangled mess, leaves torn, branches snapped, looking like a green animal that had been run over. A wave of pure, white-hot fury washed over Alex, mixed with a chilling sense of disbelief. It was a clear, undeniable act of malice. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was personal, and Brenda Sterling had just declared war. Alex stared at the ruined hedge, then at the disappearing taillights of Brenda's car, a dangerous thought hardening in their mind. There had to be a way to make her stop. And it wouldn't be with cookies or kind words. The mangled hedge felt like a punch to Alex's gut. The sight of it, crumpled and broken, burned in Alex's mind. It wasn't just a hedge. It was a symbol of the peace Alex had hoped to find in Oakwood Hills, a peace Brenda Sterling was clearly determined to shatter. That night, sleep was impossible. Alex tossed and turned, replaying the scene in their head, Brenda's car, slow and deliberate, crushing the young plants. The anger festered, growing hotter with each passing minute. How could someone be so mean, so petty, so deliberately destructive? Alex had always believed in finding common ground, in trying to understand why people behaved the way they did. But Brenda's actions felt beyond understanding, a cold, calculated attack on something innocent and beautiful. Alex spent hours just staring out the window, watching Brenda's house across the street, a dark silhouette against the streetlights. A single, powerful thought began to form: this couldn't go on. The next morning, the first thing Alex did was try to reason with Brenda one last time. Despite the rage churning inside, Alex clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, Brenda hadn't truly meant to cause so much damage, or perhaps a calm conversation could break through her icy demeanor. Alex even wrote down a few points, trying to find words that were firm but not aggressive. Alex walked across the street, feeling a sense of dread but also a desperate need to make things right, to avoid any more conflict. Brenda answered the door, her eyes narrowed instantly when she saw Alex. "What do you want, Alex?" she snapped, not even bothering to open the door fully. "I'm very busy." Alex took a deep breath. "Brenda, about the hedge," Alex began, trying to keep their voice steady. "It's been run over again. I saw your car last night. It's really damaged now. Can we please talk about this? It feels like we're not getting anywhere, and I really just want to live peacefully here." Brenda let out a short, harsh laugh. "My car? Don't be ridiculous, Alex. Perhaps you should learn to maintain your property better. The HOA clearly states hedge height and width requirements, which you consistently fail to meet." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a low, mean whisper. "And frankly, Alex, that hedge is an eyesore. It doesn't fit the aesthetic of this neighborhood. Maybe it's time you removed it entirely." She gave Alex a cold, hard stare, then slammed the door shut, leaving Alex standing alone on her porch, the sting of her words sharper than any slap. The last shred of hope that Brenda could be reasoned with, that she possessed any kindness or empathy, shattered. It was clear now, Brenda wasn't just annoying, she was a bully. And she wanted the hedge gone. Feeling defeated but also strangely determined, Alex decided to go through the proper channels. If Brenda wouldn't listen, maybe the HOA board would. Alex gathered all the evidence, photos of the damaged hedge from different angles, dates of each incident, copies of Brenda's increasingly aggressive letters, and even a detailed diagram showing how the hedge met all HOA requirements before it was repeatedly run over. Alex even included the polite notes and attempts at reconciliation. Alex spent hours writing a formal complaint, detailing everything, trying to be as fair and objective as possible. The goal wasn't to get Brenda in trouble, but to stop the damage and find a peaceful resolution. Alex mailed the letter, feeling a small spark of hope. Surely, other people on the board would see how unreasonable Brenda was being. They would surely put a stop to this. Alex even talked to Sarah, the neighbor who often shared knowing glances, and she encouraged Alex to keep fighting. "Brenda needs to be stopped, Alex," Sarah whispered, looking over her shoulder. She thinks she runs this whole place. Days turned into a week, then 2. No response from the HOA. The hedge continued to look sad and broken. Alex tried to fix it, trimming away the dead branches, watering it, giving it extra plant food, but it was clear the damage was too severe for it to fully recover on its own. It needed time, and more importantly, it needed to stop being targeted. The silence from the HOA felt heavy, like a silent agreement with Brenda. Alex felt increasingly isolated, as if the entire neighborhood was against them, even if most neighbors were too scared to speak up. Alex knew that Brenda was the HOA president, and she had a lot of power and influence. It started to sink in that getting a fair hearing through the HOA might be impossible. One afternoon, while Alex was sadly watering the struggling hedge, Brenda drove by again. This time, she didn't just drive over the hedge. She slowed her SUV down, made eye contact with Alex, and then, with a smug smirk, deliberately swerved, crushing another section of the already damaged plants. The sound of snapping branches was sickening. Then, she sped up, leaving Alex standing there, drenched from the hose, staring at the fresh devastation. It was a clear message, delivered with cruel satisfaction. Brenda wasn't just destroying the hedge. She was destroying Alex's spirit, rubbing in her power. This wasn't about rules or property lines anymore. This was about control, about making Alex feel small and helpless. The sight of her smiling face as she drove away, leaving behind a trail of broken green, ignited a new kind of anger in Alex, one colder and harder than before. Alex walked back inside, dripping wet, and looked at the phone. It was time to call the police. This was beyond property disputes. This was intentional damage, over and over again. Alex didn't know what they could do, but they had to try something different. This time, it would be a report, a formal complaint with the law. Maybe that would finally get Brenda to stop. But as Alex picked up the phone, another thought, darker and more desperate, began to flicker. What if the police couldn't help either? What then? The feeling of helplessness was a heavy blanket, but under it, a dangerous fire was starting to burn. The police officer, Officer David Gomez, listened patiently as Alex explained everything, showing him the photos of the mangled hedge. Alex described Brenda's deliberate acts, the way she had smirked, and the feeling of being bullied. Officer Gomez nodded, taking notes, but his expression was serious. "I understand your frustration, Alex," he said, his voice kind but firm. "This definitely sounds like a pattern of harassment and property damage. However, because it's happening on private property, and it's connected to an HOA dispute, it makes things tricky." He explained that while it was indeed wrong, police usually got involved only if there was a clear threat of violence or very significant damage that wasn't tied to an ongoing neighbor dispute. "We can make a report, absolutely, and I'll speak to Ms. Sterling," Officer Gomez continued. "But I have to be honest, without more direct evidence like security camera footage, or if she were to physically assault you, it might be hard to get the district attorney to press charges. This often falls into civil court, or back to the HOA to sort out." Alex's heart sank. Even the police, it seemed, were limited in what they could do. Officer Gomez did go to Brenda's house, and Alex watched from the window as he spoke to her. Brenda stood on her porch, arms crossed, her head held high, looking completely unafraid. She gestured wildly at Alex's house, no doubt complaining about the hedge herself. After a few minutes, Officer Gomez left, and Brenda, with a triumphant smirk, looked directly at Alex's window before going back inside. The police report felt like a useless piece of paper. The situation didn't get better, it actually got worse. Brenda, emboldened by the fact that even the police couldn't stop her, escalated her attacks. It wasn't just driving over the hedge anymore. The next morning, Alex found a strange, sticky liquid poured all over the struggling plants. It smelled faintly of household cleaner, and the leaves that had been touched immediately began to shrivel and turn brown. Alex tried desperately to wash it off, spraying the hedge with water for what felt like hours, but it was too late. Large sections of the hedge began to die, leaving ugly, gaping holes. This was no accident. This was deliberate poisoning. A cold, hard knot formed in Alex's stomach. This was beyond property damage, it was an act of pure spite. Alex felt sick, watching the plants that had brought so much joy wither away. Feeling helpless and furious, Alex went to a hardware store, determined to protect what was left. Alex bought some motion-activated floodlights, hoping the bright lights would scare Brenda off. Alex also bought some small, sturdy, decorative rocks to place along the edge of the property, not inside the hedge, but just barely on Alex's side of the property line, as a visual barrier. These weren't large, dangerous rocks, just pretty, rounded stones, the kind people use to border flower beds. Alex spent the whole afternoon carefully placing them, hoping they would be a gentle reminder to Brenda to stay on her side of the street. Alex even put up a small, hand-painted sign that simply said, "Please be mindful of the plants." It was a plea, a last-ditch effort for kindness in the face of so much cruelty. Alex didn't want to hurt anyone, Alex just wanted the constant torment to end. Alex genuinely believed that if Brenda saw the effort, the clear boundaries, she might finally back off. For a few days, the new floodlights seemed to work. Brenda's SUV would slow down as it approached Alex's house at night, the bright lights kicking on and making her presence obvious. She would pause, then speed up, not driving over the hedge. Alex felt a tiny spark of relief. Maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning. Maybe she was finally getting the message. The small stones lay undisturbed, and the surviving parts of the hedge seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Alex even saw Sarah wave a little more openly, a subtle nod of approval. But this brief moment of peace was just the calm before a much bigger storm. One late Tuesday night, a loud, terrible screech of tires pierced the quiet. Alex shot out of bed, heart pounding. The floodlights were blazing, casting a harsh glare across the front yard. In the bright light, Alex saw Brenda's large SUV, not just brushing the hedge, but halfway onto Alex's lawn, wheels spun wildly, stuck. One of the new, decorative rocks was wedged firmly under her front tire, stopping her cold. Brenda was inside the car, her face red with fury, banging on the steering wheel. She tried to reverse, then drive forward, but the wheel just spun, grinding the rock deeper under the tire. The sound of her engine roaring, trying to force the car over the small stone, filled the night. Alex watched in stunned silence for a moment, then grabbed a phone. This was it. This was the direct evidence Officer Gomez talked about. Brenda was caught red-handed, stuck on Alex's property, clearly attempting to run over the hedge again, the small rock a testament to her deliberate action. Alex started recording. Brenda looked up, saw Alex standing there, phone in hand, and her eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed into a venomous glare. Suddenly, with a final, desperate roar, Brenda gunned the engine. The car lurched forward, making a terrible grinding noise as the rock finally dislodged, but not before something underneath the car ripped with a terrifying clang. Brenda's SUV lurched free, spraying gravel, and she sped off, leaving a trail of smoke and the acrid smell of burning rubber. Alex stared at the spot where the car had been stuck. A small puddle of dark, oily liquid was spreading on the lawn, and a few broken pieces of plastic lay scattered where her tire had been. Brenda had done more than just run over the hedge, she had severely damaged her own car in her relentless fury. And Alex had it all on video. The sight of Brenda Sterling's car lurching away, leaving behind a dark, oily puddle and broken bits of plastic, filled Alex with a strange mix of triumph and dread. The phone in Alex's hand still felt hot from recording the video. This was it. This was the proof. Brenda had finally, undeniably, been caught. But the victory felt hollow. The hedge was still ruined, and the sheer malice in Brenda's eyes when she saw Alex recording sent a chill down Alex's spine. The immediate aftermath was tense. Alex stood there for a long time, watching Brenda's taillights disappear, then slowly walked over to examine the damage on the lawn. The oil stain was growing, a grim reminder of Brenda's destructive fury. Alex carefully picked up the broken plastic pieces, knowing they were crucial evidence. Sleep was even harder to come by that night. The sound of Brenda's engine roaring, the grinding of metal, and the image of her furious face played over and over in Alex's mind. The next morning, Alex went straight to the police station, armed with the video footage. Officer Gomez looked surprised to see Alex again so soon. "Well, Alex, you certainly got something here," he said, watching the video on his screen, his eyebrows raised as Brenda's SUV lurched and ground over the small rock. "This changes things." He explained that with clear video evidence of intentional damage to property, and the self-inflicted damage to her own vehicle on Alex's lawn, they had a much stronger case. It wasn't just a dispute anymore, it was clearly reckless endangerment and repeated property destruction. Officer Gomez assured Alex they would proceed with a formal investigation. Alex felt a glimmer of hope. Finally, someone was going to hold Brenda accountable. The police did indeed take action. A squad car was seen parked outside Brenda's house a few days later, and officers were inside for a long time. Alex didn't know what was happening, but the sight of the police cars brought a quiet satisfaction. Brenda's smug, triumphant look had been replaced by something that looked a lot like fear when she saw the police. Alex even saw her yelling at the officers at one point, her face red, before they eventually left. For a short while after that, there was a strange quiet in the neighborhood. Brenda's luxury SUV, which usually gleamed, now looked oddly out of place, slightly dented and scraped, parked in her driveway for days on end, clearly awaiting repairs. She didn't drive it, and she didn't drive over Alex's Hedge. The remaining parts of the Hedge, though still damaged, were left untouched. It was a fragile piece, but a piece nonetheless. Alex started to think that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally coming to an end. Perhaps the police involvement had truly scared Brenda straight. This period of quiet, though, felt like the calm before another storm. Brenda stopped sending official HOA letters about the Hedge. She even stopped glaring when she saw Alex in the yard. For a few weeks, Alex started to breathe easier, even considering trying to replant the damaged sections of the Hedge. Alex thought Brenda had finally given up. Maybe the legal consequences, or just the hassle of dealing with the police and her damaged car, had taught her a lesson. Alex even felt a pang of something akin to pity for Brenda, seeing her once perfect car sitting damaged. It was a reminder that even bullies could face consequences. Alex tried to focus on nurturing the remaining parts of the Hedge, to bring some life back to the front yard. Alex spent more time outside, enjoying the fresh air and the growing quiet of the neighborhood. The relief was immense. But then, the passive-aggressive attacks began. They weren't direct like the car incidents, but they were deeply unsettling. First, small, unpleasant smells started to waft from Brenda's property, especially strong when Alex was outside. It wasn't constant, but just enough to be annoying, like something slightly rotten. Alex would try to ignore it, but it was hard. Then, loud, jarring noises would suddenly erupt from Brenda's yard whenever Alex stepped outside. It could be a leaf blower running for hours, or the sudden blare of incredibly loud music, only to stop the moment Alex went back inside. It was clear Brenda was watching, waiting, trying to make Alex's life miserable without breaking any specific law. It felt like she was constantly poking, testing the boundaries, trying to find new ways to annoy and upset Alex. One particularly warm afternoon, Alex was outside, finally feeling happy and relaxed, watering the surviving parts of the Hedge, when a large, dark object flew over the fence from Brenda's yard and landed with a sickening splat right on top of the Hedge. It was a dead possum, decaying and foul-smelling. Alex recoiled in horror, a scream catching in their throat. It was not an accident. It was a deliberate, disgusting act. The smell was horrendous, and the sight of the dead animal on the beloved Hedge was deeply disturbing. Alex stood there, frozen, staring at the horrible mess. The relief and hope from the past weeks instantly evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. This wasn't just about a hedge or a car anymore. This was about a person who would go to truly extreme lengths to cause distress. Brenda was clearly still intent on making Alex's life a living nightmare, and she was escalating her tactics to new, sickening levels. The possum was a terrifying message, a warning of how far she was willing to go, and it made Alex's blood run cold. The dead possum lying on the hedge was a grotesque and sickening sight. Alex stared at it, frozen in disgust and horror. The putrid smell filled the air, making Alex gag. This wasn't just mean, it was genuinely disturbing. It was clear Brenda Sterling was no longer just a nuisance, she was truly unhinged, willing to go to extreme, disgusting lengths. A wave of fear washed over Alex, cold and unsettling. What kind of person would do something like this? It was beyond simple neighborly animosity. This felt like a threat, a twisted message that Brenda would stop at nothing to torment Alex. The thought of having to touch the rotting animal filled Alex with dread, but it had to be removed. With a shovel and a strong stomach, Alex carefully scooped up the possum and buried it deep in the backyard, trying to scrub the memory from their mind as much as the stench from their hands. The incident left Alex feeling vulnerable and constantly on edge. Every rustle outside, every distant sound, made Alex jump. The feeling of peace Alex had sought in Oakwood Hills had completely vanished, replaced by a suffocating sense of anxiety. Alex tried to reach out to the police again, but after the dead possum incident, Officer Gomez seemed even more helpless. "Alex," he explained over the phone, his voice weary, "we understand this is awful, but short of catching her in the act, or proving beyond a doubt she put the animal there, it's extremely difficult. It's not a violent crime, and it falls into a gray area of harassment that's hard to prosecute without direct evidence. We can't just stand by your Hedge 24/7. He suggested getting more security cameras, perhaps, or even a restraining order, but even those would be a long and difficult legal battle. Alex realized with a sinking heart that the official routes were exhausted. The police were tired of the calls, and Brenda seemed untouchable. The neighborhood, too, seemed to shrink away. Neighbors who once offered quiet sympathy now averted their eyes when they saw Alex. Sarah, who had been friendly, suddenly became busy whenever Alex tried to talk to her. It was clear Brenda had spread rumors, or perhaps people were simply too scared to get involved. Alex felt completely alone, an outcast in a neighborhood that once felt like home. The hedge, which had been a symbol of hope, was now a constant reminder of the torment. It was a dying monument to Brenda's cruelty, a daily jab at Alex's spirit. One particularly frustrating afternoon, Alex was attempting to trim away more dead branches from the hedge when Brenda drove by slowly, her repaired SUV gleaming. She paused right in front of Alex's house, lowered her window, and stared directly at Alex with a triumphant, evil grin. "That hedge of yours is looking rather pathetic, isn't it, Alex?" she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "Just completely useless. You know, some things just aren't meant to be. Like that ugly patch of green. It just doesn't fit in." She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound, and then peeled away, leaving Alex standing there, shears in hand, shaking with a cold fury. The humiliation, the endless torment, the feeling of being completely helpless against her relentless attacks, all welled up inside Alex. The hedge, the source of so much joy and now so much pain, was dying, and Brenda was dancing on its grave. That night, something inside Alex snapped. The kindness, the empathy, the desire for peaceful resolution, all of it had been stomped on, poisoned, and finally buried under a dead animal. Brenda had taken everything, peace, hope, and now, even the last shred of Alex's patience. Alex lay awake, not with fear, but with a cold, burning resolve. If the police wouldn't help, if the HOA wouldn't help, if no one else would stand up to Brenda Sterling, then Alex would have to. A dark, dangerous idea began to form in Alex's mind, born out of sheer desperation and a profound sense of injustice. The image of Brenda's smug face, her gleaming SUV, and the mangled Hedge all swirled together. A plan, extreme and terrifying, started to take shape, piece by piece. Alex knew it was risky, maybe even wrong, but what other choice was there? Brenda had pushed Alex to the absolute limit. The final straw came a few days later. Alex returned home from work to find the entire remaining section of the hedge had been completely torn out of the ground. It wasn't just dead branches anymore, it was gone. Torn, uprooted, lying in sad, dirty piles on the lawn. Not just the part Brenda had repeatedly run over, but the whole thing. It looked like someone had driven a tractor through it, or simply pulled it out with brute force. A large, perfectly cut circular hole was left in the ground where the hedge once stood. A brand new, perfectly manicured, artificial plastic bush was planted neatly in the center of the hole. It was a hideous, fake green, clearly placed there by Brenda. Attached to it was a small, laminated sign that read, HOA Approved Landscaping. Welcome to Oakwood Hills, where standards are maintained. The message was clear. Brenda hadn't just destroyed the hedge, she had utterly erased it and replaced it with her own mocking version of conformity. Alex stared at the plastic bush, at the empty space where the living hedge had been, and a chilling calm settled over them. The rage was gone, replaced by a quiet, steely determination. Brenda had taken everything, leaving nothing left to lose. And now, she would pay the true price for her relentless cruelty. The sight of the artificial plastic bush, a cruel monument to Brenda Sterling's victory, filled Alex with a chilling calm. The rage had transformed into a cold, focused resolve. There was no more sadness, no more fear, just a quiet determination to make Brenda truly understand the pain she had caused. The time for talking, for polite requests, for legal procedures, was long past. Brenda had chosen this path, and now she would face the consequences of her relentless cruelty. Alex looked at the plastic mockery, then across the street at Brenda's perfectly manicured lawn and her gleaming SUV. A wild, almost exhilarating sense of freedom settled over Alex. When you have nothing left to lose, anything is possible. The next few days were a blur of intense, secret planning. Alex didn't tell anyone, not Sarah, not David, no one. This was something Alex had to do alone. Hours were spent online, researching, watching videos, learning about things Alex never thought they would. Alex learned about the fascinating world of industrial equipment, the mechanics of salvage, and the surprising accessibility of certain specialized services if you knew where to look and, more importantly, how to pay. Every spare moment was dedicated to the mission. Alex sold some old electronics, picked up extra shifts at work, and saved every penny. The goal was precise. To turn Brenda's most prized possession, the very car that had been her weapon, into nothing more than scrap. It was a daunting, almost impossible task, but Alex's mind was made up. This wasn't about revenge, it was about balance, about delivering a lesson Brenda would never forget. The first step was to find the right equipment and the right people. It took days of quiet searching, late-night phone calls, and hushed conversations. Alex finally connected with someone who ran a small, private demolition and salvage operation, a man named Frank, who didn't ask too many questions as long as the money was good and the job was clear. Alex explained the need for a very specific, discreet demolition of a vehicle, emphasizing that it was for an art project, a performance piece about consumerism and destruction. Frank, a gruff but practical man, just grunted and talked numbers. The price was steep, requiring almost every penny Alex had saved and more. But the thought of Brenda's car being reduced to twisted metal was worth every sacrifice. The hardest part was going to be the timing and the execution. Alex studied Brenda's routine like a hawk, noting when she left for her weekly grocery trips, how long she was gone, and how often she checked her security cameras, which were mostly aimed at her own house, not the street. The plan had to be flawless, executed quickly and silently, leaving no trace. Alex imagined the scene, again and again, refining every detail, anticipating every possible problem. It was a dangerous game, one that could land Alex in serious trouble, but the thought of Brenda's endless torment, the dead possum, the destroyed hedge, fueled Alex's resolve. This was the only way to truly make it stop. The chosen night arrived, dark and moonless, with a thick blanket of clouds perfect for hiding stars and intentions. Alex felt a strange mix of nervousness and exhilaration. This was the night. Brenda was out, confirmed by a quick, careful check. The street was quiet, most neighbors asleep. Alex gave Frank the signal. Minutes later, a large, dark vehicle, looking like a tow truck but clearly more robust, slowly, silently rolled down the street, its lights dimmed. It parked perfectly in front of Brenda's house. Alex, hidden in the garage, watched through a small crack, heart thumping like a drum. Frank and his small crew, moving like shadows, expertly hooked up Brenda's sleek SUV. It was a tense few minutes, the air thick with suppressed sound. With a soft hydraulic hiss, the SUV was lifted, then carefully lowered onto a waiting flatbed truck that had silently followed. There was no loud engine roar, no screech of tires, just the soft hum of machinery. In less than 5 minutes, Brenda's beloved SUV was gone, vanished into the night as silently as it had appeared. Alex then pulled out a prearranged payment envelope and discreetly slipped it to Frank as he drove by. Frank simply nodded, gave a quick, almost imperceptible salute, and the flatbed truck, carrying its valuable cargo, disappeared down the street. Alex walked back inside, the house feeling strangely empty and quiet. Brenda's car was gone, but the plan wasn't over. The true moment of reckoning was still to come. Alex knew Brenda would discover her missing car and likely call the police immediately. But what she wouldn't expect was what came next. Alex made a final phone call, speaking in hushed tones, confirming the last part of the plan. The next morning, the neighborhood was alive with hushed whispers and frantic activity. Brenda Sterling was outside, hysterical, pacing back and forth, talking loudly on her phone. Her SUV was gone. The police arrived quickly, sirens wailing, adding to the commotion. They questioned Brenda, then went door to door, asking if anyone had seen anything. Alex, calm and composed, simply told Officer Gomez that they had been asleep and hadn't heard a thing, offering sincere-sounding sympathy to Brenda. Brenda glared at Alex, suspicious, but had no proof. The officers left, promising to investigate. Brenda stewed, fuming with rage, calling everyone she knew, wondering who would dare steal her precious vehicle. Later that afternoon, a large, heavy-duty truck, the kind used for hauling trash or scrap metal, rumbled slowly down Oakwood Hill Street. It was bright yellow and clearly marked with waste management and recycling. It pulled up directly in front of Brenda Sterling's house. Brenda, still pacing and muttering on her lawn, stopped dead. Her jaw dropped. On the back of the truck, clearly visible for the entire neighborhood to see, was a large, tightly compressed cube of mangled metal, barely recognizable as a car. A sign was taped to its side, clearly visible, HOA approved landscaping removal and waste disposal. Where standards are truly maintained. Brenda screamed, a truly horrifying, guttural sound that echoed through the quiet street. It was her SUV, flattened, crushed, utterly destroyed, now a block of junk. Alex watched from the window, a quiet, almost peaceful smile spreading across their face. The plastic bush still stood in Alex's yard, but now, right in front of Brenda's eyes, was the ultimate, inescapable message. Brenda finally stood face to face with the true meaning of destruction, all while the entire neighborhood, who had silently suffered under her tyranny, watched her perfect world crumble into scrap.